This is a story about a millionaire and his son conspiring to kill their handyman for allegedly stealing his motorcycles, jewelry, large amounts of cash, and other commodities. This is a story about a millionaire and his son clearly getting things wrong. But firstly, we're going to talk about who is John Brooks, the millionaire murderer conspirer. Coming from humble beginnings, Brooks, born in New Hampshire, known for its small size but still plays a significant role for fishing, quarry mining, potato farming, and the famous lines of Paul Revere and Concord where the British were coming. He spent his teenage years working in Manchester Mill, making cotton gauze. After graduating high school, he enlisted into the military and spent time as a Navy medic. It's unclear how much time he served though. He later attended the University of New Hampshire, where he met his wife, Lorraine. Brooks established Polyvac in 1985 to manufacture plastic orthopedic braces. He also had a private orthotics practice, which was basically like a side hustle for him. In 1997, he was known as the New Hampshire Smallest Business Person of the Year, and at the time, he was suggested for high political office in his state. In other words, he was offered to become governor of New Hampshire. He began to experiment polymers that could withstand temperatures for sterilizing reusable delivery trays, holding surgical instruments for operating room procedures. In 1989, he sold orthodontics for practice, incorporated Polyvac, and focused on the tray business. For many people, this sounds like this isn't really a big deal. However, Polyvac constructed the trays, and in 1994, Brooks combines two chemicals. These chemicals right here. Initially, with 5 Nissan presses of 500 tons, creates these surgical trays and sells it off to medical facilities and clinics. This success of Polyvac led to $20 million in 1 year. This increases Brooks' publicity in the small business industry, where in 1996, Polyvac constructed its first major plant in Manchester, New Hampshire, the same place where he still built cotton gauze as a kid. With 94,000 square feet of manufacturing space and a huge office of 19,000 square feet, he even signed a deal with a medical facility to become a main transporter of surgical trays and sterilization liquids, which he quickly rose to becoming a chairman and executive vice president for business development for newly formed parent firm Athi Holding Inc. In other words, he now owns 2 major companies and doubled his net worth. Now, it really sounds like everything was lining up perfectly for Brooks. With all this money, he felt so confident to leave his business with all his employees in New Hampshire and move to New Vegas as his primary home. So it began from here. Jack Reed was a native of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and eventually settled in Derry, New Hampshire. After working in the oil industry for years, Jack started his own trucking company in 1996. Jack was well respected in his community and had a tremendous work ethic. He also served in the Army in the 1960s. At the time of the year of the incident, Jack was working towards retiring in a year or so and moving to Las Vegas, Nevada. 2003, Brooks hired Jack to move his belongings from New Hampshire to his new house in Las Vegas. When Jack was done moving all his belongings in Las Vegas, Brooks was acting suspicious about Jack. Brooks was accusing him of stealing his 2 Harley-Davidson motorcycles, stacks of cash and rubber bands, jewelry, and his dad's ashes? All of this was worth $200,000, including his dad's ashes. Brooks did not take this lightly. And look, I understand this is a lot of money. However, taking these kinds of accusatory claims with no evidence is very dangerous. Brooks called up his son on the phone and told him about everything. His son Jesse Brooks was convinced and hired Robin Knight, Michael Benton, one of Jesse's childhood friends, and Joseph Freeman, were ordered to kill Jack for $10,000. He really wanted him dead. Jesse even told Joseph, one of the killers, to make sure you have a gun because Mr. Reed always has guns around him. Make sure you wear a bulletproof vest. So it begins. Kill Jack in New Hampshire. Don't get caught. Things were escalating very quickly. Brooks, with a fake high-pitched voice, called Jack using a prepaid phone in the inner city and asked him to come to a horse farm in Deerfield, New Hampshire, under the impression of a job offering. This barn was owned by Michael Connors, an acquaintance of Brooks. Michael was convinced by Brooks to pick up the package at an airport. This package of goodies contained handcuffs, pepper spray, and a stun gun to subdue Jack. After this meeting, Ruben obtained the bag of goodies and came from Brooks' home, where they packaged the supplies and sent them to Connors Airport in New Hampshire. On June 18, 2005, Brooks and Ruben flew to New Hampshire, where Connors picked them up at the airport, waiting for the sign to open the package when they get there. Throughout the week, Brooks, Ruben, joined by Knight, purchased more supplies: a large black plastic tarp, duct tape, garbage bags, zip ties, saran wrap, and gloves. They decided that Ruben, Knight, and Benton would subdue Jack, and Jay would be armed with his .22 caliber handgun in case if anything went wrong. Like a car full of clowns, they drove to Connors' barn before the Jack got there. Alrighty, now that I made things a little more clearer, let's go back to Jack, the victim's perspective. Jack was close to the location. He slammed his car door and approached the address. But Jack was not even suspicious. He went on and on into a dark barn where 4 of the anonymous men were ready to strike. Surprisingly, in front of the barn, Knight and Ruben greeted Jack and slowly led him down into a narrow hallway into the barn. In an instant, all hell broke loose. Ruben pushed Reed into the closet and with a 3-pound sledgehammer slammed it into Jack's skull. There was no escape for Jack. Blood was beginning to cover the whole floor of the tiny room. Knight told Benton, Jesse's childhood friend, that Jack was not dead yet, and Benton struck 2 or 3 additional blows to Jack's forehead with the 3-pound sledgehammer. Knight, Ruben, and Brooks carried Jack, still somehow breathing after 4 blows to the head, from the closet to the black plastic tarp which had been laid out in the tiny room so police officers don't really gather evidence after the murder. As Knight and Benton tried to clean up the blood, Ruben told Brooks that Jack would not stop bleeding. Ruben was complaining about the amount of blood Jack was still dropping. So when Ruben told Brooks about this, Brooks told Ruben to, quote-unquote, stop the heart, stop the bleeding. This led to Ruben slamming the sledgehammer 3 times on his diaphragm, emptying Jack's pockets, then wrapping his body into a thick tarp, carrying his lifeless body to a Target parking lot. On June 29, 2005, Jack's family started worrying when he didn't show up to one of his jobs. Jack didn't answer his phone, so the family reported him missing. Over a week later, Jack's truck was found abandoned in a parking lot in Saugus, Massachusetts, about 40 miles from his house. His body was found rolled up in the plastic and under a tarp in his car. He suffered blunt force trauma to the head and was only able to be identified through dental records. Now just imagine, you're only identified by dental records. Just imagine what his head looks like, all smushed up by a 3-pound sledgehammer. You may think this is over, but these serious cases are never over. Cops will do anything in their power to solve a hard case. That is until they run out of footprints. The cops had to start from scratch. They knew that these suspects were dangerous. Eventually, cops found Jack's rotting body inside his dump truck at the Target parking lot. You see, Ruben and Knight were thinking of moving the dump truck, but these Einstein scholars lost the key to the truck while moving the truck in the Target parking lot. And so they found surveillance footage of Jack from a waste management facility in Londonderry, New Hampshire, and it showed Jack alive at 2:13 p.m. That is until 5:30 p.m. They drove his body along with his dump truck. While leaving his body there, they escaped into a 2005 Toyota minivan. Here's the thing. The authorities got very lucky. They saw cameras in front of the Target store and asked the manager for footage to take it back to forensic. They saw 2 men jump into the van. Ruben, Knight, and meanwhile Benton was driving and Brooks was in the passenger seat. Another big piece of evidence was when authorities discovered Jack's phone records with his phone provider, that the last call he made that day was to the number associated with Charlie Wass. This number was traced from a prepaid telephone activated in June 19, 2005, and the name of Charlie Wass. The only call shown by the record of the Charlie Wass telephone that was not to Jack was a call placed to the telephone from a landline in Brooks' home in New Derry, New Hampshire. Essentially speaking, the cops traced Brooks' IP address to his house in Derry by using his phone number, but under a fake identity. Before even Jack died, he stored a logbook, which they found on Connor's property while getting rid of evidence. I don't know, these criminals are pretty dumb. I don't know what to tell y'all. While skimming around the pages, he wrote down Charlie Wass, the number linked to Brooks' number. The police even obtained flight records showing that Brooks had traveled within 2 different individuals from Manchester, New Hampshire to Las Vegas, Nevada, in July with Joseph Ruman and Robin Knight. It looks like the tables are now turning very fast. It gets even worse. The next day after the murder, Ruman and Knight returned to Connor's barn and replaced the walls and floor of the closet to hide Jack's blood. However, authorities found dry blood on the roof, which they took to forensic analysis and came back positive for Jack's blood DNA. December 2006, they even found the same handcuffs to apprehend Jack. These handcuffs were thrown into a river. The police even went further to check Vrooman, Benton, and Brooks' travel records, all consistent with each other's plans to kill Jack. Later on, each and one of them will be apprehended by the FBI, and they were arrested one by one before they could attempt to cover their tracks. Brooks was arrested first, Vrooman secondly, Benton later threw the Munns, and lastly Knight. Oh yeah, and forgot. Brooks' son also got arrested, Jesse Brooks. Jack's family in the courtroom were understandably in mixed emotions. As the family cried, Brooks appeared emotionless. He was still under the impression that this man stole everything from him, including his dad's ashes. It was concluded that no one knows who stole his property. The police didn't find any evidence that Jack took Brooks' commodities. This was a suicidal mistake filled with anger. John Brooks was spared from death penalty, and so he was convicted for murder, as he was officially sentenced to life imprisonment. 1 for aggravated kidnapping, and 2 for murder. Jack's family were speaking directly to Brooks about how emotionally damaged they were. Jack's daughter, Megan, said, "To the coward that murdered my daddy, I despise you." Megan told Brooks that Jack spoke good about him as a successful inventor, a good businessman, and even bragging about it to his friends that he's working for him. You know, he admired you and look what you did to him. You're disgusting. Jack was simply a lovely man, ready to retire. He really didn't need the money, and he hoped he was going to live a peaceful, quiet life. As he grew older, he was wishing for more grandchildren, seeing them grow just to be wrongfully accused of stealing someone else's property. I was going to talk about the other 3 men that were involved in this case with the perpetrator right here. But that video will be 40 minutes long. But yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking by. Like and subscribe. Let's go hit 1,000 subscribers. Until next time, see you guys later.